Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Chris. Welcome to LinuxTechGeek. So, in today's video, what we're going to be doing is installing Gentoo Linux. Now, I do this video about once every year simply because the handbook changes quite often. So, I like to make sure that all of the content is kind of up to date. Not only that, but you guys really seem to enjoy this content, and you guys asked for it. And I told you that I would do it. All right. Now, we're going to be grabbing an ISO, probably the LabGUI ISO, and I'll talk about the different ISOs. I'm also going to be installing this in a virtual machine. Let me repeat that. I'm going to be installing this in a virtual machine. The reason I have to install this in a virtual machine and not on actual hardware for you guys is because I don't own two computers, okay? You need two computers and some kind of capture card in order to install something on bare metal and still be able to capture that using like OBS or something, okay? I don't have that. So for that reason, all these like Linux install type of videos, I typically have to do them in a virtual machine just so that way I can show you guys. Now, with that being said, all the commands I enter, everything works exactly the same. The only thing that could be slightly different would be the hard drive, okay? Because the way that virtual machines name their hard drives could be a little bit different than the way that physical hard drives are named, okay? So let's go ahead and let's jump over to the desktop here. I'm going to open up a web browser. We're going to be talking about the different versions of the GUI, the ISO images that you can grab. And then I'm going to set up a virtual machine, probably off camera. I'll talk a little bit about it, and then we'll just jump right into the actual install guide. All right, we're on the gentoo.org website here. Now, let's go to the download section. Now, there's a couple different ways that you can grab the boot media or whatever. You can grab this minimum installation CD, okay? This is just going to be a TTY. There will not be any Xorg or Wayland or any of that stuff with the minimum installation CD. However, if you grab the LabGUI USB image, you will be in a KDE environment. And in my personal opinion, the LabGUI USB image is a little bit easier to work with, simply because you'll have a full GUI at your disposal, and of course, like Firefox and all those GUI apps will work. Not only that, but copying and pasting is a heck of a lot easier using the LabGUI. Now, one thing to note, and I want to highlight this. If you are going to be installing Gentoo, okay, and if you don't know which one of these to grab, always check the timestamp right here in the date, okay? So you can see today is the 6th of November. These ISO images was released 3 days ago, okay? Now, every now and then, for whatever reason, the LabGUI USB image is a little bit behind most times from the minimum installation CD, okay? So just remember that sometimes if you want to grab one of these images, just always check the timestamp, or not the timestamp, but the date that these images got released, because typically the LabGUI is a little bit behind. Now, normally that's not really a big deal, but it's just something I did want to mention to you guys. And also check the, it's always good to check the dates on the stage archives as well. It's just less stuff that you're gonna have to do later on. Okay. Other than that, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab the LabGUI USB image, probably off camera, let that download. I'm going to set up a virtual machine super quick. I'll run through some of the settings set up in that virtual machine, and then we will boot into this LabGUI USB image. All right, so looks like we got our virtual machine set up. Now, what I did do with this virtual machine because I want to keep this virtual machine as close to what you guys might be using as far as hardware. We are going to be using UEFI. This will be a UEFI system because most of you guys will probably be using UEFI. And I gave this this virtual machine 16 gigs of RAM, okay, 12 cores of my CPU. That way, compiling and stuff like that takes a little bit, it goes a little bit faster. That way, I do this video. This video is already going to be probably about almost an hour long. I will try to cut it down a little bit in post-production, but don't be surprised if it's a little long. All right, so it looks like everything is pretty good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to shift this window right here. I'm going to shift this window probably over there, and then we're going to boot this live CD here. Let's full screen this. Let this boot up here. And you see we get this pretty I think this is KDE 6.6. Okay. Now we do need to fix the screen resolution. There's a couple of different things that we need to do before we really get started here. Okay. One thing, I need to get into settings. Now I am not a expert in KDE, but I do like the black theme. I think makes it a little bit easier to see things. We do need to set the screen resolution. That way you guys can actually see stuff. 1920 by 1080. We'll probably run with that resolution right there. That looks perfect. Now I need to check the date and time here. So this says it's what's 16? 16 is 4 o'clock. I don't think it's that. No. All right. So we do need to fix the time. So the way that I personally would just fix the time, since we're using a live GUI, is we can just use the GUI kind of tool. But in order to do this, we need to change the default root password here on the ISO. So the way that we do that, and we can do just sudo su. That will give us root. Okay. Now we can do just password. Give it a complicated password. Okay. And then after that, what we can do is we can just use the little tool here. So we can say date and time. Okay. And then it is quite early here. It is not 11:46, I believe. Let me check my phone again. It is 11:46. Yes. Okay. And see, this is the reason we need to set a password. So we just type in a little complicated password, hit OK, let this take effect, and then everything is pretty much set up. Okay, so we have a root. Root's already set up. Terminal set up. Let me update that. Now, there's fonts for you guys. I do understand that sometimes the screen resolution that I film in can mess up the fonts quite a bit. I know some of you guys have complained about it in the past. Hopefully this is a little bit better. You can read this. Okay, so the very first thing that we need to actually do to install Gentoo, okay, is we need to prepare the hard drive. Okay, so the way we can do this is we can do ls vok. That way we can see which hard drive is our, which drive is our physical hard drive, right? So we can tell by this right here, if we do ls vok, that this SDA right here, this is our hard drive, right? Because I gave this virtual machine 40 gigs of space, and it tells you right here that the type is a disk. Okay, so if you don't know which what your hard drive is named or whatever, just type in lsvok, and you can quickly look through the name list right here, and you can tell. Okay, so we can do cf disk dev sda. Okay, Now, this is the important thing. Because we are using UEFI or EFI, we need to make this, the label type has to be GPT, okay? If you're using the old standard BIOS install for grub and stuff like that, you can select DOS here if you want to. I still personally would recommend GPT. GPT will allow you to have more than 4 partitions, and it's just a newer way of doing things, okay? So we select GPT here, okay? And now I've got 40 gigs of space to play with, all right? So the first partition is always going to be boot. So this is going to be our boot partition. This is going to be our EFI partition, okay? So we can do 1 gig. I like to give it about a gig. It's probably too much space, but it's better to go over a little bit than under, in my opinion. Okay, then we go to new again. Now, SDA2 will probably be our home partition. Now, I do personally use a home partition. I know some people don't really do that, but I prefer having a separate home partition. So I can just do like 15 gigs for home. And then the rest of it, it's just going to be root. Now, for this partition scheme right here, I'm really not setting up swap. However, if this was actual, like, my actual machine, and I was going to use this as a, you know, as my desktop or whatever, then I probably would set up a swap. However, since this is a VM, I'm not really worried about it. Okay. So we go back to SDA1 here, and we need to change this type, right? Because this is going to be UEFI, okay? So we go back to SDA1, select type, and then we can scroll up. And we just select EFI system. Like that, perfect. And then we can go to write. We write it, yes. And then we can quit. Great. Next thing that we need to do is we need to set up our file system. Okay, so the way we do this is make fs at capital F 32 dev SDA1. What this command right here does, EFI has to be a FAT32 file system. Thank Microsoft. I mean, I don't know why. This is the stupidest thing in my personal opinion, but it has to be a FAT32 file system. Okay, so we'll make it a FAT32 file system. Now the other two file systems can be whatever we choose to do. I'm just going to do extends4 because why not? Doesn't make a difference. Make fs extend4 dev SDA4 or SDA3 rather. Great. Now our file systems are made. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to mount this new root file system that we made. We need to mount it to a directory so that way we can actually put data into that, right? We can start building our system. Okay, so we can do make dir, and then we can do parents, and then we can do mount Gentoo. Okay, and now we can mount dev SDA3 mount Gentoo. Now what this is going to do is we made a new directory called mount Gentoo, and then we're mounting SDA3, which is going to be our root partition, and we mounted it to that new directory that we made. All right, great. We have two other file systems though, right? Remember, we have a root, we have a home, and we have a boot, okay? So let's go to that mount Gentoo. Now we can make dir, and we can make it home. And we can mount dev SDA2 home. and we can verify. Great. Everything looks like it's working correctly. Now, there's a couple of different things, and let me, we're going to pull up the handbook here. This is another great thing about using the GUI is we do have Firefox available to us. So, Gentoo handbook. And then we'll go to the AMD 64 because we're using AMD 64. And then we will go to, it might be preparing the disk. I'm not sure. Yes. This is what they recommend you do. So right here it says for EFI installs only, the ESP should be mounted under the root partition location. That's what they recommend that you do. I'm going to tell you, you don't have to do that. In fact, on my actual system, I mount all my EFI crap, I mount it under /boot. With that being said, in this tutorial, okay, I'm probably going to follow the handbook. But I'm telling you right now, you don't have to, okay? I don't know why they recommend that you do this. Personally, I don't like another directory in my root file system. But like I said, this is what they actually recommend. So we'll do it. So we'll do make their parents mount into EFI. And then we should mount this too. Mount dev SDA1 mount into EFI. Right? Verify. All right. Everything is mounted correctly. Great. So installing the stage 3 tarball. All right. So we're doing the stage 3. We are going to be doing OpenRC in this install. If you're interested in ButterFS or in systemd, be sure to check out another one of my Gentoo install videos. I do have a video on how to install Gentoo using systemd, and it's pretty relevant. It's not too, it's not that old or anything. So I need to download the stage 3. Now we already set the time and date. That was one of the reasons I like to set the time and date correctly at the very beginning, because we're going to need to do that anyway. But everything's taken care of on that front, so we can just go to gentoo.org again. We can go to downloads, and we can go to the stage 3 OpenRC tarball. Okay, so we download that. Okay, and then we can just move, we can move this tarball. We can move it inside of our new root directory, right? So we have that. Now what we need to do is we need to actually untar it. And this is another great thing about using the GUI, is we can just simply untar it like this. Okay, so it's tar xpvf stage, and it'll be stage 3, and then x attributes include, and then numeric owner. Okay, we hit enter. It'll go through the process. Awesome, it's done that. Next, we need to complete the compile options. All right, so we need to do this right here, is we need to set a couple options inside of our make.configuration file in order to make the compilation time a lot faster, right? So luckily for us too, on this live GUI, Vim is actually installed, which is fantastic. Good choice by the developers. So we do etc portage, and then make.conf. Okay, and then we come over here and we do March equals native. There are a bunch of different flags that you can set for your CPU right here. Okay, I recommend that you reading the handbook if you want to set more than the stuff that I'm setting. But pretty much everybody that I know, they just set this March equals native, and then what this will do is whenever you're compiling software, it takes advantage of your actual CPU hardware. Okay, and then another thing that we got to do is we got to do this make ops, and then this make ops, what this will do is this will give you parallel compilation, or it will take advantage of how many cores that you give it. So I could give it every single thing that I have on my system to compile. I'm not going to do that because I need, I do need some resources to actually run the this system here. Okay, but we can do it's going to be lowercase j, and then you need to give it a number. So I gave it I gave this virtual machine 12 cores of my 24 core processor, but I'm only going to give it 10 cores in this virtual machine to actually compile. Okay, that way I have 2 cores to actually run like the VM, and then also remember that every core that you give it of your processor, it's recommended that you need 2 gigs of RAM per core. So I have 32 gigs of RAM. Okay. Actually, in this virtual machine, I might need to take this down a bit. Yep, we're going to have to take this down because I only gave us 16 gigs of 16 gigs. So we can do probably like, I'll do J7 just to be a little safer. Okay. So J7, so you can do 7 times 2, that's 14. I gave this 16 gigabytes of RAM. Whenever I compile, it's going to use 14 gigs. That's how you can kind of think of it. Okay, so it's whatever number that you give it times 2, that's how much RAM that you need to actually have on your system. Or what's recommended. We do that, and then you can read it through all this if you want to, but pretty much we just did what the handbook suggests. And then you can see right here, this make ops. And right here, a good choice is the smaller of the number of threads the CPU has, or the total amount of system RAM divided by 2 gigabytes. So that's what I was saying. So if you do J6, then you want at least 12 gigabytes of RAM. Ready, set, go. Installing the base system. Perfect. Okay, so the next step in this process is we need to copy over our etc resolve .configuration from the lab USB. That way we have internet, okay? Oh, we didn't even talk about internet yet, but I kind of skipped that step. I do apologize, but pretty much, if you use the lab GUI, you can. They got like a lab GUI tool that you can you can connect to your network and everything like that. And then if you're using, you can use like ifconfig and stuff. You should know how to connect to the network. Pretty simple stuff. So we need to copy over this etc resolve. So let's copy the reference etc resolve to mount Gentoo etc. Okay, perfect. Now here is where the guide has sort of changed a little bit, right? Before, what you had to do, and I think you still need to do this if you're planning on using systemd, I'm not 100% sure, But before, if you remember, we used to have to copy and paste every single one of these mount points, right? We no longer have to do that. It says, if using Gentoo's install media, this step can be replaced with simply arch-chroot mount Gentoo. That brings us to another point. You do not need to have the Gentoo install media in order to install Gentoo. You can install Gentoo using any lab USB that you want. You can. A lot of people use Arch, like a Arch lab USB stick. I mean, it's recommended that you use the Gentoo install media, but you don't have to. Okay. So just keep that in mind when you go to install Gentoo, or if you're thinking about it. All right. So this arch-chroot and then mount Gentoo. So arch-chroot mount Gentoo. Boom. So you can see now we're chrooted into our new install environment. In fact, if we do vim now, you can see vim doesn't work because we're in a new sort of environment. Now we do need to, I like to check to make sure that my network connection is still going. So the way I do this is ping -c. So -c means count. So I don't want to burn up the server. So we're going to ping Google 3 times, right? And you can see 3 pings came back. We're good. We still got network connection. Great. All right. Right here, it also says when using non-Gentoo install media, you may have to do some of this stuff down here as well. Okay, so like I said, you don't have to install Gentoo using the install media, but it does save you some steps. Next is entering the new environment. Well, we don't really need to do this chroot mount Gentoo because we just chrooted into a new environment, but we do probably need to source the profile. That's fine. Source etc profile. And then this export PS1 chroot PS1, all that's going to do is that's going to change your prompt here, and I really don't care about that. So preparing for a bootloader. UEFI systems, here we go. So we already mounted our boot partition to the /EFI. We don't need to do that anymore. But if you had not done that, then it's recommended that you do that now. Configuring portage. So we can do this emerge web sync. So emerge web. All right. So we can pull this down. It shouldn't take too long here. Okay. So we did the web rsync. And now it also, there's an optional that we can select mirrors. Now, if you're going to be doing this on actual hardware, or if you're thinking about, using Gentoo full time or whatever, it's probably recommended that you do this mirror select, just so that way you have the fastest mirrors available to you. However, I don't really care. This is a virtual machine for me. So I'm just going to skip that step, and I'm going to go to the optional updating the Gentoo ebuild repository. And the way that we do that is we just simply do emerge --sync. Okay. And then some of the other stuff available to us is you will see after we get done doing this that there will be a bunch of news items, okay? And these news items, they can be pretty important. This is just a way that the developers of Gentoo, they they bring the news to us, the user, and this is how they do it. Okay, so it's kind of cool because if they ever change something, or if any package is going to be updating, or if you have to do something specifically, chances are they put it in the news. And I'll show you an example of that as soon as this emerge sync happens. Taking a little bit here. All right, so now you can see it says important 15 news items needs reading. Okay, so we can do this eselect news. You can do a news list, and it will show you all the stuff in the list. So if we wanted to read, I don't know, maybe if you was curious about this OpenRC display manager initializer script or whatever. Okay, so you could do eselect news read 4. Okay, and then it would pretty much, you would go through it, and it would tell you exactly what you needed to do. But I'm going to do eselect news read all, and then it's going to read everything, and then I'm going to do eselect news read purge, or eselect news purge all. All right, and that's if you purge any news that you've read, purge will just get rid of the it'll get rid of it. So now we won't be bugged anymore. All right, next step in the installation process, however, is choosing a profile. Now this is pretty important. Okay, so we'll go through this. So eselect profile list. There's a lot of different profiles here, folks. All right. But pretty much what you want to do is you want to stay on the 23.0 sort of profile, and they got several different ones. If you're going to be using GNOME with OpenRC, then select 25. If you're going to be using systemd with GNOME, use 26. Same with Plasma. Okay. You can stay right here on this stable profile and still install Xorg or Wayland if you're going to. It doesn't matter. However, I will say that if you do switch to the different profile, okay, the profile it'll automatically import certain stuff for you to help you further advance getting your desktop set up, for instance. Okay, so typically what I do is I'll either stay on the stable profile, or I'll switch over to the desktop profile, because I don't really use GNOME or Plasma any other time. And then of course they also got some other kind of profiles here too. So they got these split user profiles now, and they got a lot of stuff kind of going on. This will be a 2-part video. So the first part in this video, of course, will be actually installing Gentoo and getting it up and running. The next part of this install guide, however, will probably be how to set up a desktop. Okay, so for that reason, what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just select this 23 profile right here. This is the stable desktop profile. So we're going to do eselect profile set 23, because that was the 23 right there. Okay, and then we need to source that profile as soon as we switch to it. Okay, and they tell you right here in the note, if you're going to be using systemd, make sure that you select a systemd profile. Okay, it's very important. The systemd and the OpenRC profiles do not intertwine. All right. Next thing, and this is kind of new, many of you guys know that Gentoo in 2023 they started releasing a binary host. So you can, people say that Gentoo is all about compiling software, compile. No, it's not. Not anymore. It's not. It can be if you want it to be, but if you don't want it to be, you don't have to do a whole hell of a lot of compiling anymore. Okay. In fact, I'm going to show you right now how we can set up default bin or default binaries rather than compiling. Not every package though will use the bin host. And that's what I've seen. But mostly a lot of packages will actually take advantage of this. Okay, so we need to verify. Let's go ahead and verify that this etc portage bin repos.config is actually there. So we can do ls etc etc portage, and you can see we got that. Actually, let's go ahead and switch to it. So we can do etc portage bin repos.conf. So you can see we got that Gentoo bin host right there. Okay. Now, I will say that if, like I said, if this is going to be your full-time machine, or if you're going to be installing this on bare metal and this is going to be your desktop, change this right here. Okay, there is some mirrors that you can select. I would recommend changing this. I'm personally not, because this is a virtual machine for me, but I would consider using a local mirror. Okay, just to kind of speed things up and relieve the stress on some of the servers. All right, so next, if we want to use binary as our default, okay, and this is important because what we can actually do is we can install we can have the emerge default to binary host rather than the default compilation. So we can do nano, and then we're going to go to the make conf here, and then we got to add a couple of different things, but I'm going to show you what to add here. I hate nano. All right, so it's going to be under futures, and then we're going to be doing equals, and then we got to put a couple of different things here. So if we read the guide, all right, so we can install the binary packages two different ways. We can, when we do emerge, we can pass in this get bin package option right here, and that will grab the binary version. However, if we wanted to configure portage to use the binary packages by default, we can just import a couple of these different strings right here. Okay, so one of them is get bin package, so we can do get bin package. Okay, and then the other import will be bin package request signature. Okay, so bin package request signature. Okay, so we do that, and now we need to run this get tutu for portage to set up key rings. Okay, so this is I'm pretty sure you need key rings or whatever for binary packages. So we just run get tutu or get uto, however you want to say it. But pretty much you run it. It's gonna complain a little bit about the GNU PG here, and then unsafe permissions. Okay, cool. So now that that's doing that, we need to set up a couple of different things inside our make.configuration again. However, before we do that, I'm going to I'm going to install Vim, and I'm going to show you how fast the binary process works versus the other way of doing things. So you can see quite a few packages here, but not really. It's not going to take that long, right? But you can see total 118 packages. About 115 of those are binary, right? So I mean, this is pretty quick. And this is Gentoo, guys. Remember? It takes a long time to compile, and it takes a long time to install software, and all of those negative things that people tend to say about Gentoo. I mean, you're seeing how fast, or it's really taken to install all these different packages. Not any slower than I mean, it's not as fast as probably Arch or something like that, but for a source-based distro, this is actually quite fast. And now, like I said, you don't have to use this new way of doing things, like this new binary host and all of that stuff. If you don't want to use binaries, don't. What I can say though is, even if you do use binaries, you can still set your you can still set the use flags and everything like that, which is super useful. All right, so I'm going to pause the video because we're starting to get into some of the other some of the bigger software. I'm going to pause the video. I'll bring you guys back as soon as we get finished here. Now that Vim is done installing, now what we can do is we can Vim into etc forage.make.configuration, okay? And then we can set some global use flags. Now, myself, I personally do not put a lot of global use flags inside of my make configuration file. I typically prefer to do individual packages with use flags. However, there are a couple of different use flag variables that I'll go ahead and set. Okay, so number one, I don't want Wayland. Okay, so we're gonna no Wayland, no KDE, no GNOME. I'll go ahead and do X, because we're probably going to be using X on our second video. And then I'll just do like pulse audio. And then, yeah, I think that would be no QT, maybe. I think that'd be all right. Oh, and we can put dist kernel. And the reason I like to put dist kernel in there is simply because later on, when we use a we're going to be using a binary distribution kernel. All right, so that's recommended. And then they just have a lot of flags that you can put in that. You can go through the whole entire list if you want to. Those are just some of the defaults that I prefer to keep in there. And then we also need to, we're going to install this package here in a second, but we're going to do this super fast. So video cards. Video underscore cards equals, and then QXL. I think I'm using the QXL driver. Not 100% sure. I'm probably going to have to switch that out later on. But the next thing though is going to be accept the licenses. Accept the license. Okay, and I personally just accept all licenses. You don't have to do this. You do you, but I'll just go ahead and accept all. And the way that we accept all is we just put a put a star. Okay, so we right and quit that. And then we need this CPU ID, CPU flags. We probably don't have to have it, but it's something they recommend. So we'll go ahead and do that. Let that install here. Now it's going to install, quick and easy. And then we can also echo this out to package.use. All right, cool. So that's just some additional like CPU like flag stuff. That package there. And then we already configured the accept license variable. But if you don't want to accept all licenses and you just want to accept certain licenses, they have names of all the licenses that you can, you can put it in your make configuration file, and then it gives you some examples of like how to do it. And then you can also do it per package as well. And this is kind of super useful if maybe you don't want to globally accept all licenses, but you only want to accept licenses from certain packages. Then this is the file that you would use. Updating the world set. Okay, so we can do. We'll do emerge AV update deep. New use at world. Let's see how many packages this is going to want us to install here. Quite a bit, right? Quite a bit. 99 new, 27 reinstall because I don't have Wayland support anymore, which is fine. All right, let's do it. So I'm gonna let this do its thing, and I'm going to pause the video. Probably get me a drink. My throat's a little parched right now, and then yeah, I'm going to let this install, and then when it gets done, we will continue. Okay, now that the system upgrade has been done, we need to run this emerge dep clean. That way we can see what packages are obsolete, and we can remove. Now, it's important to do the pretend command first, just to verify that all the packages that the system's going to remove, you're really not using those. So I'm going to do dep clean with the pretend, and you can see some of the packages. So it's going to remove these packages currently right here. Now, we're using this CPU ID to CPU flags package. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy it. Okay. And then we can use this emerge no replace. And then we can pass that in. And I think this will make sure that it does not remove it. Okay. Now we can do that emerge dep clean, and it shouldn't remove that. You can see the packages that it's going to remove right now. But the important thing is that it does not remove some of the stuff that you want to keep on the system. All right, so next thing is we need to set up our time zone. So we can do ls user share. I think it's zone info, and then you can select your time zone. All right. And then we need to set up some kind of symbolic link to that time zone, so we can do ln minus sf user share time zone or zone info, and then America, and mine is going to be Kentucky, and then Louisville. I don't actually live in Louisville, but that's the time zone that I use. And then we need to pass that to etc local time. Okay, so we make that symbolic link right there. And then we need to configure our locales. So we can do etc locale.gen. So user favorite text editor, vim. So etc locale.gen. And then we can go down, and then we need to select at least one UTF-8 profile. So that's the one I'm going to use right there. Right and quit that. And now we need to generate the locale. So we generated it. Now we need to use the eselect locale command, and we need to set it system-wide. We can do eselect locale. We can set, and I'm going to set 4 because I want to use that English US UTF-8 profile or locale profile. So we can do that, and then we just source etc profile. Okay, so good there. And that's all this text is pretty much stating to do is locale.gen, and then eselect locale list and stuff like that. So we did all of that, and then they also say do an environment update. I guess we can do that. That's cool. All right, cool. Configuring the kernel. We were almost done here. So I personally like to use a binary distribution kernel. Okay, I don't have the means anymore to create custom kernels and all that stuff. Some of you guys, some of you really nerdy guys might, and I used to do that back in way back in the old days. And but for me these days, as long as my kernel boots and it supports everything that I need for my particular system, that's all I really care about, right? So another thing to note here is that we have some firmware type of stuff. Now, if you're using a AMD machine with an AMD processor, you want to install this Linux firmware package. Okay, this Linux firmware package is just going to have additional drivers and stuff like that for the kernel. There is also something called the Open Sound firmware. I think this is a new thing with the new Intel cards. I'm not 100% sure. So you could install this if you have that on your system. And if you have a Intel processor, instead of installing the Linux firmware package, you would want to install the Intel microcode package right here. Okay, so we have an AMD system, so I'm just going to install the Linux firmware package. So emerge a Linux firmware, and then we can go down. Okay, so it's telling us that we need this install kernel drag cut, this use flag. That's okay. Like I said, we can set that. This is we can go ahead and set that now, and I can show you how to do that. So we just echo the sys kernel install kernel 48-R1, and then we need to pass in drag cut, and then we can do etc portage package.use, and then we can do install kernel right there. So what we're essentially doing is, remember I was telling you that we can set specific use flags for specific packages. That's all we're doing right now. Okay, so we're telling this package, this install kernel package, that the Linux firmware package is going to pull down. We're telling it pretty much to use drag cut. Okay, so, and then we echo all of that out, and we put it in that package.use file right there. Okay, and then I can show you the full actual command. Let me move my big head here. So there you go. So you can see fully how that's written out. Okay, it's quick and dirty. But now, because we do that, now watch what happens. When we go to emerge Linux firmware, it's not going to complain anymore. And it's going to be like, oh, okay. So now you can see that install kernel right there. Now it has the drag cut use flag. So that's how you do use flags pretty much per package. So while that's doing that, we can go through some of this list right here. Like I said, I used a binary kernel. I have never used any of these other kernels. Users of grub can use kernel installer to Tricia install kernel. Yeah, we don't have to really do any of this. So that's kind of what we just got done doing right there. This EFI stub crap, we don't have to deal with that. Init RAM FS, as long as we have drag cut installed, that will obviously that will handle that for us. And then some of this is the install kernel package, the secure boot stuff. I don't deal with any of the secure boot crap. Distribution kernels. Here we go. We don't really have to worry about any of that. We don't need to make custom sign keys or anything like that. Here's what we want though. So we want this. If you want a quick, easy kernel that just kind of works, then install this. It's the Gentoo kernel binary. Okay, so we can do emerge Gentoo kernel bin. All right. Calculate some dependencies. And it may not be the, top of the line kernel, the newest, kernel that's out or anything like that. But typically the kernel, it does just work. And that's kind of what we want. We don't have to really do any of this. If you want to install the kernel source code, maybe you want to do your own custom kernel or whatever, then you can install this Gentoo sources package. I don't really deal with any of that anymore. And then there's a guide on how to do some of the manual configuration. Have at it if that's your cup of tea. Like I said, I'm not really going to be doing all that because in my opinion, there's probably too many options inside of the kernel these days, and I personally probably wouldn't even know where to begin on doing a custom kernel. But I know many people do. So have at it. Okay. Next thing that we need to do, did it do drag cut? It did do drag cut. You need drag cut installed pretty much for the init RAM FS. Now, what I like to do is, I like to eselect kernel list and then eselect kernel kernel set 1. I do this even though it's already checked right there, just to make sure that we have a symbolic link to user user share, no, user source kernel. Yeah, user source Linux. Okay. Yeah. So user source Linux will now have a symbolic link to that 6.6.58 kernel. Okay. The next thing that we need to verify here is verify boot. So if we do ls/boot here, you can see that we have some system stuff. So we got the VM Linux thing, the images, some kernel images, and the system map and stuff like that. Okay, everything that we need possibly to make the system actual boot. We need to set up, I think we need to set up fstab or fstab. Okay, configuring the system here. So fstab, there's a couple of different ways you can do fstab. You can do fstab manually, or there is actually a tool that you can use, and it does a really good job. So we're going to use the tool. So we need to emerge, it's called gen fstab, okay? Now this is a quick, and it's quick and dirty, but look, I'll be honest, I've used this generate fstab before. It does work. Now, is it perfect? Honestly, I don't know. But I can say that it hasn't failed me. All right, and the way that we use this is we can do generate fstab, and we can do a slash here. Okay, so you generate the fstab, okay, and then you give it your root partition, or your root file system, and then it will generate a list of stuff, right? So you can see that it picked up all my hard drives, it picked up all the file systems, all that. Double verify all this, of course, okay? And then, but you can see, like, it does a pretty damn good job of doing everything kind of for you, right? So the way that we write this data to fstab is we can do generate fstab, okay, and now we can append all this stuff to etc fstab, right? We write it, and then we can verify it. Always good to verify. Boom. And now it's automatically set in there for us. We didn't have to waste a lot of time, right? That's it. The only thing that I don't think the generate fstab will do is if you want to do UUID and stuff like that. I'm not sure if fstab can actually do that. Generate fstab. It might be able to do it. Yeah. So it can do UUIDs and stuff like that for you as well. So generate fstab, and then let me do /u. Let me see. Just seeing if it's going to work here. Yeah. So it can. It looks like, I think it can do that. For source identifiers, use tag for source identifier. Tag should be one of label. Use labels, restrict. How come it didn't work there? That is weird. Yeah, didn't work. That's weird. Maybe I'm just doing it wrong. I don't know. But regardless, it is a pretty simple to use tool that will pretty much automatically get it done for you. And then right here, as you can see, it's talking about UEFI systems and stuff like that. And then talking about some of the options to kind of set. Go as an example of this format GPT disk label and discoverable partitions specifications. I don't know. I do not know anything about some of that stuff. Okay. Next thing, we need to set up the host name for the OpenRC. All right. So we can do echo. I'll just say this is Gentoo Bert etc host name. All right, cool. We wrote that. Now we have a host name. Network. We need DHCP-CD. So emerge DHCP-CD. This will allow us to get a IP address when the system boots here. So we need to enable and then start the service. So RC update, add DHCP-CD to default. All right, the service has already started. We don't need to RC service. We don't need to restart the service. It's already started right now. Optionally, I think we can also use this net ifrc. We don't really need to use this when we're using DHCP-CD. We can configure this file right here. However, I don't think we really need to, so I'm not going to. We do need to do this though. So next, we need to set up our Ethernet card in order for the Ethernet card to register at boot time. Okay, so go cd init etc init.d. Okay, and then it says make a symbolic link from net.lo, which is the loopback network information, and then to the actual physical card. Their example right here says net.etho, but that is not correct anymore. Okay, and I'm going to show you. So what you need to do to figure out which card is yours, you need to do the if config. Okay, so we do a if config right here, and you can see this is my card, right? ENP1SO. So we can copy that. So now we can do ln-s net.lo and then net.our card, right? I hope this makes sense because the guide, this guide is a bit still old. Okay, no one uses ETHO anymore for their network cards. Most of the time, you're going to get some kind of EMP1 or EMP3 or whatever, right? So just verify which network card you are using. Okay, so when you make this symbolic link right here. So that's what I'm doing right there. Okay, so now you can see we have it right. Where is it? Yeah, right here. So now you can see it right here. Okay. So now we need to make this bootable. All right. So RC update add net.emp1so default. So we just made a new service and we put it on the default running level. So now what'll happen is when we reboot, it'll automatically bring up this network card, okay? And then DHCP-CD will then use this information to automatically get an IP address. All right, host file, blah, blah, blah. etc host, we can do something like that. etc host. So we can just do some local host stuff. I'll just put Gentoo vert. Right there. Alright, looks like I kind of fixed the issue here. I don't know what happened. I don't know why it freaked out as much as it did, but man, it was a little mad at me. Regardless, it doesn't matter. We got it. We rooted back in. No harm, no foul. Alright, so the next thing, the next thing that we need to do, as I said, we need to select a root password. Now, this password will be your actual root password, okay? So this is not the root password that you just set on the ISO image. This will be your actual root password. So this one, you know, this one does actually need to be complicated or secure, whatever you want to say. All right, cool. My password is good. All right, we're almost done. We can skip all of this crap right here, so we don't need to do this rc.configuration file. You can if you want to. You can check it out. Key maps. If you're using QWERTY and the English US key map, then go ahead and skip this file as well. However, if you're not using QWERTY or you're doing something different with different key maps, then check that out. The hardware clock feature, or file rather, is a you might want to change that to local if you're going to be dual booting or anything, simply because the clock skew is kind of a real thing. And what clock skew is pretty much is kind of like you might be on Linux and your clock might be correct, but then when you switch over to, let's say, Windows, whatever, you have to reset the clock, right? So this hardware clock file right here, this is where you can kind of set it so that way you don't get that weird clock skew action, because it's kind of a pain in the ass to keep fixing the clock every single time that you switch back and forth. Installing the tools. Let's install some tools. Okay, we need a system logger. I believe in a system logger. So the one that you recommend is syslogd. And that's an okay system logger. As you can see, it's done compiling. So we need to set it to the default render level. So rc update add 6k-logd default. Okay. The next thing will be a cron, Damien. If you're not going to be using any kind of cron service or anything like that, then you can skip this. What a cron service is almost like a scheduler where you can schedule like certain stuff to happen like automatically for you. So to be honest, I've never used a scheduler before, so I don't even install it. But there's different ones that you can select. That's on this list. I'm sure there's also different ones on the, in the actual portage. File indexing. We can install the mlocate. So this is for file indexing. Note that the update, please customize it, blah, blah, blah. The database for the locate command is generally daily by the cron job you can install. Okay, update db. Okay. So that's good. Remote show access, so SSH. I'm not going to be messing with any SSH stuff here in this video, but you can set up some SSH stuff. And also there's the OpenRC commands as well as the systemd commands if you're going to be using systemd. So optional shell completion. I do like me some shell completion stuff. So emerge bash completion. I have some. Let's spell it right. I did. App shows bash completion. That's 3 easy packages right there. Time synchronization. We are going to be setting up time synchronization just so we don't get any weird clock skew and stuff like that. So they suggest crony or cronny. So we'll emerge that. And then we need to add cronny D to the default run level right there. So RC update add cronny D default. Pretty easy. File system tools. So we do need a couple of file system tools. We need the DOS-FS tools because we have a UEFI system, and this will allow us to mount and unmount that. And we also, because we're using the extend4 file system, even though this package may already be installed, I always install it anyway. So let's go ahead and merge those. And if you're using Btrfs or anything like that, then make sure to install the appropriate package. E2fs progs, and then I think it's the DOS-FS tools. Okay. Those are installed. And you can see the Btrfs would be Btrfs progs, ZFS, and JFS utilities. Also, if you're using a NVMe device, like the new NVMe hard drives, then it is recommended to install the this IO scheduler UDEV rules package. I actually use a NVMe drive. However, I don't use it here on Gentoo. That's my Windows stuff. So, but if you use one, install the package. Again, it's asking you to install DHCP-CD. I don't know why the handbook is suggesting to install this package again. We've installed it. This is one of the weird things about this. They've updated the handbook 3 or 4 different times. However, there's still stuff in the handbook that they continually to ask you to do, and it's like you've done it. I don't know. But regardless, it's asking you to install DHCP CD again, and we're not going to do it because we did it earlier. Also, installing a PPOE client. No one has a PPOE client anymore. I mean, if you have a PPOE client, so if you don't know what PPOE is, that's the old external 56K modems or whatever. It's dial-up, essentially. And if you have a wireless network card, okay, then here's a couple of tools that you might want to install. You might want to install the IW package along with WPA supplicant package. I would also recommend that you install the wireless tools package. So those 3 different packages are pretty good for wireless. Configuring the bootloader. Selecting a bootloader. Of course, we use grub. Okay, so number 1 thing, it's going to tell you to emerge grub first. I'm going to tell you not to. All right, I'm going to tell you if you're using EFI, copy this first, okay? And I'm going to show you why. All right, they ask you to emerge grub, and then we do this echo command right here, then we do grub again. All right, I think it's pointless. Just if you're using EFI, do the echo command, then install grub. Okay, and what the echo command actually does all it does is portage make.conf, and you can see what it does is it tells the system that you're going to be using EFI64 for grub. All right, so now we can emerge grub. And then grub will have support for the EFI. So you can see it's pulling down some of the EFI type of stuff. And grub needs to have EFI support in order for it to use the EFI stuff. Also, if you're running a dual boot, this is pretty important. By default, grub does not pick up additional operating systems. Okay, there is another package that you need to install for grub to pick up another operating system. It's called OS Prober, and I will show you the package. I'm not going to install it here on this virtual machine. You can check out my other videos on how to do that, but it does not do it by default. And I think there will be something that tells you right here. So you need to install this program right here, sysboot OS Prober, for detecting other operating systems. Okay, pretty important. Next, we can do, if you do that that OS Prober package, what you would do next is there is a file that you would have to edit, and that file is in etc default, and the file would be called grub. Okay, and essentially what you would do is you would go all the way at the bottom, and then there's a command, there's a variable that you would have to set in order for grub to pick up other operating systems, along with that that OS Prober package. Okay, so be aware of that. Next thing though is we need to install grub on to the boot partition. In our case, it's going to be that EFI partition, right? So for UEFI systems, you need this command right here: grub install EFI directory, and then point it to the right directory. So we do grub install if okay. I didn't want that. Grub install EFI directory. Man, it does not really want to autocomplete, does it? It's all right. Grub install EFI directory equals EFI. So type in that, hit enter. Hopefully it installs right. That's the hardest part. In my opinion, that's the hardest part about installing Gentoo, is making sure that grub installs right, because without grub, pretty much we're not going to be booting into anything. But you can see that no errors got reported, and it installed installed correctly. So we're fine. We're good. Next thing is we need to make the actual configuration here. I don't know. We might still just be able to do this. See, normally the way that I install grub is, or the way I install EFI stuff, I don't ever put grub. I'm going to try this. Grub make config -o boot grub cog. It found everything. Okay, it found everything. So I guess you can also do this to automatically have it handled by the install kernel package or whatever. I don't never do anything like that. I just do everything manually pretty much, but there are some automation stuff that you can kind of do. Maybe I'll check into that some other time. And then this is talking about how we can install grub on a removable like thumb drive or whatever. Okay, so it did all of that. It looks good. Everything looks good. And then if you run systemd, then you need to do some of the systemd type of stuff. Or secure boot, if you do secure boot. Next thing is actually just rebooting the system. Okay. And then unmount, mount. Okay. We unmounted everything. Let's give it a good old reboot. Verify everything works correctly. Now I need to turn this off. So force off, and then I need to change some stuff in my virtualization. I need to turn off the CD-ROM because we want it to boot from the drive now. Okay. And if everything goes okay, then Gentoo will just boot. And there you go. pretty easy. And then we can do we can ping to make sure that the network is running. We're good. So this has been my updated Gentoo 2024 install video. If you guys have found any value in this video, give me a thumbs up. It does help out the channel. If you are new and you're thinking about subscribing to the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me. And what we do here on the channel is we do a lot of Gentoo Linux content. Also, if you guys have any questions or comments or feedback, or maybe I went too fast in a certain section of this video, then leave it down below, guys. I'll always get back to you guys. And as far as timestamps, I'm going to try and do my best to timestamp this entire video. Now, I'm not going to timestamp every single little thing that I've done. Okay, that would just be ridiculous. But I am going to try and break it down a little bit better for you guys. That way you guys don't have to sit through some of the, just some of the parts that you are already kind of like familiar with. All right. And yeah, this has been a lot of fun. First video back, and I hope you guys enjoyed the content. So until next time, you guys take care, be safe, and peace. Thanks for watching, guys.